Raining in the graveyard, and the work puddled into blunt reflections. Bot sat, concealed from anyone, living or dead, who might come looking for him, under the arch that separated the Egyptian walk and the northwestern wilderness beyond it from the rest of the graveyard. And he read his book. Damn, came a shout from down the path. Damn you, sir, and blast your eyes. When I catch you, and find you I shall make you rue the day you were born. Bot sighed and he lowered the book, and leaned out enough to see Thackeray Porringer come stamping up the slippery path. Thackeray was a big boy. He had been 14 when he died, following his initiation as an apprentice to a master house painter. He had given 8 copper pennies and told not to come back without half a gallon of red and white striped paint for painting Barbara's poles. Thackeray had spent 5 hours being sent all over the town one slushy January morning, being laughed at each establishment he visited, and then sent on to the next. When he realized he had been made a fool of, he had taken an angry case of apoplexy, which carried him off within a week, and he died glaring furiously at the other apprentices and even at Mr. Horrobin, the master painter, who had undergone so much worse back when he was apprentice that he could scarcely see what all the fuss was about. So Thackeray Porringer had died in a fury, clutching his copy of Robinson Crusoe, which was, apart from a silver sixpence with edges clipped in the clothes he had formerly been standing up in, all that he owned, and at his mother's request, he was buried with his book. Death had not improved Thackeray Porringer's temper, and now he was shouting, "I know you're here somewhere. Come here and take your punishment, you thief." Bob closed the book. "I'm not a thief, Thackeray. I'm only borrowing it. I promise I'll give the book back when I'm finished it." Thackeray looked up, saw Bot nestled behind the statue of Osiris. "I told you not to." Bot sighed. "But there are so few books here. It's just up to a good bit anyway. He's found a footprint. It's not his. That means someone else is on the island." "It's my book," said Thackeray Porringer obstinately. "Give it back." Bot was ready to argue or simply to negotiate, but he saw the hurt look on Thackeray's face, and he relented. Bot clambered down the side of the arch, jumped the last few feet. He held out the book. "Here." Thackeray took it gracelessly and glared. "I could read it to you," offered Bot. "I could do that." "You can go and boil your fat head," said Thackeray, and he swung a punch at Bot's ear. It connected, and it stung, although judging from the look on Thackeray Porringer's face, Bot realized it must have hurt his fist as much as it had hurt Bot. The bigger boy stomped off down the path, and Bot watched him go, ear hurting, eye stinging. Then he walked through the rain back down the treacherous, ivy-covered path. At one point, he slipped and scraped his knee, tearing his jeans. There was a willow grove beside the wall, and Bot almost ran into Miss Euphemia Horsfall and Tom Sands, who had been stepping out together for many years. Tom had been buried so long ago that his stone was just a weathered rock, and he had lived and died during the 100 Years' War with France, while Miss Euphemia had been buried in Victorian times after the graveyard had been expanded and extended and became, for some 50 years, a successful commercial enterprise. And she had a whole tomb to herself behind a black door in the willow walk. But the couple seemed to have no troubles with the difference in their historical periods. "You should slow down, young boy," said Tom. "You'll do yourself an injury." "You already did," said Miss Euphemia. "Oh dear boy, I have no doubt that your mother will have words with you about that. It's not as if we can easily repair those pantaloons." Sorry," said Bot. "And your guardian was looking for you," added Tom. Bot looked up the grey sky. "But it's still daylight," he said. "He's at bedtime," said Tom, a word which Bot knew meant early, and said to tell you he wanted you, if he saw you. Bot nodded. "There's ripe hazelnuts in the thicket just beyond the Little John's monument," said Tom with a smile. as if softening a blow. Thank you, said Bart. He ran on pell-mell through the rain and down the winding path into the lower slopes of the graveyard, running until he reached the old chapel. The chapel door was open, and Silas, who had laughed for neither the rain or the remnants of the daylight, was standing inside in the shadows. I heard you were looking for me, said Bart. Yes, said Silas. Then, it appears you have torn your trousers. I was running, said Bart. I got into a bit of a fight with Thackeray Porringer. I wanted to read Robinson Crusoe. It's a book about a man on a boat. That's a thing that goes in the sea, which is like water, like an enormous puddle, and how the ship is wrecked on an island, which is a place on the sea where you can stand. And Silas said, it had been 11 years, Bart. 11 years that you have been with us. Right, said Bart, if you say so. Silas looked down at his charge. The boy was lean, and his mouse-colored hair had darkened slightly with age. Inside the old chapel, it was all shadows. I think, said Silas, it is time to talk about where you came from. Bart breathed in deeply. He said, it doesn't have to be now, not if you don't want to. He said it as easily as he could, but his heart was thudding in his chest. Silence. Only the patter of the rain and the wash of the water from the drain pipes. A silence that stretched until Bart thought that he would break. Silas said, you know you're different, that you are alive, that we took you in, they took you in here, and that I agreed to be your guardian. Bart said nothing. Silas continued in his voice like velvet. You had parents, an older sister. They were killed. I believe that you will have been killed as well, and that you were not was due to chance and the intervention of the Owensers. And you, said Bart, who had that night described to him over the years by many people, some of whom had even been there. It had been a big night in the graveyard. Silas said, out there, the man who killed your family is, I believe, still looking for you, still intends to kill you. Bart shrugged. So, he said, it's only death. I mean, all of my best friends are dead. Yes, Silas hesitated. They are. And they are for the most part done with the world. You are not. You're alive, Bart. That means you have infinite potential. You can do anything, make anything, dream anything. If you change the world will change. Potential. Once you're dead, it's gone. Over. You've made what you've made, dreamed your dream, written your name. You may be buried here, you may even walk, but that potential is finished. Bart thought about this. It seemed almost true, although he could think of exceptions, his parents adopting him, for example. But the dead and the living were different, he knew that, even if his sympathies were with the dead. What about you, he asked Silas. What about me? Well, you aren't alive, and you go around and do things. I, said Silas, am precisely what I am, and nothing more. I am, as you say, not alive. But if I am ended, I shall simply cease to be. My kind are, we are not. If you see what I mean. Not really. Silas sighed. The rain had stopped and the cloudy gloaming had become true twilight. Bart, he said, there are many reasons why it is important that we keep you safe. Bart said, the person who hurt my family, the one who wants to kill me, you are certain that he is still out there. There was something he had been thinking for about a while now, and he knew what he wanted. Yes, he's still out there. Then, said Bart, and said the unsayable. I want to go to school. Silas was imperturbable. The world could have ended, and he would have not turned into and he would not have turned the hair. But now his mouth open and his brow furrowed, and he said on me, "What?" "I've learned a lot in this graveyard," said God. "I can fade and I can haunt. I can open a ghoul gate, and I know the constellations. But there's a world out there, with the sea in it, and islands, and shipwrecks, and pigs. I mean, it's filled with things I don't know. And the teachers here have taught me lots of things, but I need more. But if I'm going to survive out there one day..." Silas seems unimpressed. "Out of the question. Here we can keep you safe. Outside, anything could happen." How could we keep you safe out there?" "Yes," agreed Bond. "That's the potential thing you were talking about." He fell silent. Then, "Someone killed my mother and my father and my sister." "Yes, someone did." "A man?" "A man." "Which means," said Bart, "you're asking the wrong question." Silas raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "Well," said Bart, "if I go outside in the world, the question isn't, who will keep me safe from him? No. It's who will keep him safe from me." Twigs scratched the ground against the high windows, as if they needed to be let in. Silas flicked an imaginary speck of dust from his sleeve with his fingernail as sharp as a blade. He said, "We'll need you to find a school. We will need to find you a school." No one noticed the boy, not at first. No one even noticed that they hadn't noticed him. He sat halfway back in class. He didn't answer much, not unless he was directly asked a question. And even then his answers were short and forgettable, colorless. He faded in mind and memory. "Do you think they're religious, his family?" asked Mr. Kirby in the staff room. He was marking essays. "Whose family?" asked Mrs. McKinnon. "Owen's at 8B, said Mr. Kirby. "The tall, spotty lad?" "I don't think so. Sort of medium height." Mrs. McKinnon shrugged. "What about him?" "Handwrites everything," said Mr. Kirby. Lovely handwriting. What they used to call copper plate. And that makes him religious because he says that he says they don't have a computer, and he doesn't have a phone." "I don't see why that makes him religious," said Mrs. McKinnon, who had taken up crocheting when they had banned smoking in the staff room, and was sitting and crocheting a baby blanket for no one in particular. Mr. Kirby shrugged. "He's a smart lad," he said. "There's just stuff he doesn't know. And in history he'll throw in little made-up details, stuff not in the books." "What kind of stuff?" Mr. Kirby finished marking Bart's essay and put it down on the pile. Without something immediately in front of him, the whole matter seemed vague and unimportant. "Stuff," he said, and forgot about it. Just as he forgot to enter Bart's name on the roll. Just as Bart's name was not to be found on the school databases. The boy was a model pupil, forgettable and easily forgotten, and he spent much of his spare time in the back of the English class where there were shelves of old paperbacks, and in the school library, a large room filled with books and old armchairs, where he read stories as enthusiastically as some children did. Even the other kids forgot about him. Not when he was sitting in front of them. They remembered him then. But when that Owens kid was out of sight, he was out of mind. They didn't think about him. They didn't need to. If someone asked all the kids in 8B to close their eyes and list the 25 boys and girls in the class, that Owens kid wouldn't have been on the list. His presence was almost ghostly. It was different if he was there, of course. Nick Farthing was 12, but he could pass, and did sometimes, for 16. A large boy with a crooked smile and little imagination. He was practical in a basic sort of way, an efficient shoplifter, an occasional thug, who did not care about being liked as long as the other kids, all smaller, did what he said. Anyway, he had a friend. Her name was Maureen Quilling, but everyone called her Mo. And she was thin and had pale skin and pale yellow hair, watery blue eyes, and a sharp, inquisitive nose. Nick liked to shoplift, but Mo told him what to steal. Nick could hit and hurt and intimidate, but Mo pointed him at the people who needed to be intimidated. They were, as she told him, sometimes a perfect team. They were sitting in the corner of the library, splitting the take of the Year 7's pocket money. They had 8 or 9 of the 11-year-olds trained to hand over their pocket money every week. The Singh kid hasn't coughed up yet, said Mo. We'll have to find him. Yeah, said Nick. He'll pay. What was it he nicked? A CD? Nick nodded. Just point out the error of his ways, said Mo, who wanted to sound like the hard cases from the television. Easy, said Nick. We're a good team. Like Batman and Robin, said Mo. More like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, said somebody who had been reading unnoticed in the window seat, and he got up and walked out of the room. Paul Singh was sitting on a windowsill by the changing rooms, his hands deep in his pockets, thinking dark thoughts. He took one hand out of his pocket, opened it, looked at the handful of pound coins, shook his head, closed his hand around the coins once more. Is that what Nick and Mo are waiting for? Somebody asked, and Paul jumped, scattering money all over the floor. The other boy helped him pick up the coins, handed them over. He was an older boy, and Paul thought that he had seen him around before, but he could not be certain. Paul said, Are you with them, Nick and Mo? The other boy shook his head. No. I think that they are very repulsive. He hesitated. Then he said, Actually, I came to give you a bit of advice. Yeah? Don't pay them. Easy for you to say. Because they aren't blackmailing me. The boy looked at Paul, and Paul looked away, ashamed. They hit you or threatened you until you shoplifted a CD for them. Then they told you that unless you handed over your pocket money to them, they'd tell on you. What did they do? Film you doing it? Paul nodded. Just say no, said the boy. Don't do it. They'll kill me, and they said, tell them that you think the police and school authorities could be a lot more interested in a couple of kids who are getting younger kids to steal for them, and then forcing them to hand over their pocket money than they ever would be in one kid forced to steal a CD against his will. That if they touch you again, you'll make the call to the police, and that you've written it all out, and if anything happens to you, anything at all, if you get a black eye or anything, your friends will automatically send it to the school authorities and the police. Paul said, but I can't. Then you'll pay them your pocket money for the rest of your time in this school, and you'll stay scared of them. Paul thought, why don't I just tell the police anyway, he asked. Can if you like. I'll try it your way first, Paul smiled. He smiled. It wasn't a big smile, but it was a smile. Right enough, his first in 3 weeks. So Paul Singh explained to Nick Farthing just how and why he wouldn't be paying him any longer, and walked away while Nick Farthing just stood and didn't say anything, clenching and unclenching his fists. And the next day, other 5-11-year-olds found Nick Farthing in the playground and told him they wanted their money back. All the pocket money they had handed over in the previous month, but they'd be going to the police, and now Nick Farthing was an extremely unhappy young man. Mo said, it was him. He started it. If it wasn't for him, they'd never have thought of it on their own. He's the one who we have to teach a lesson. Then they'll all behave. Who? Said Nick. The one who's always reading. The one from the library. Bob Owens. Him. Nick nodded slowly. Then he said, which one is he? I'll point him out to you, said Mo. Bot was used to being ignored, to existing in the shadows. When glances naturally slip from you, you become very aware of eyes upon you, of glances in your direction, of attention. And if you barely exist in people's minds as another living person, then being pointed to, being followed around, these things draw attention to themselves. They followed him out of the school and up the road, past the corner newsagent, and across the railway bridge. He took his time, making certain that the two who were following him, a burly boy and a fair sharp-faced girl, did not lose him. Then he walked into the tiny churchyard at the end of the road, a miniature graveyard behind the local church, and he waited beside the tomb of Roderick Person and his wife Amabella, and also his second wife Petunia.
Past the corner newsagent and across the railway bridge. He took his time, making certain that the two who were following him, a burly boy and a fair sharp-faced girl, did not lose him. Then he walked into the tiny church at the end of the road, a miniature graveyard behind the local church, and he waited behind the tomb of Roderick Person and his wife Amabella, and also his second wife Petunia. They sleep to wake again. "You're that kid," said a girl's voice. Bob Owens. "Well, you're in really big trouble now, Bob Owens. It's Bot actually. I like that with a D and you're like Jekyll and Hyde." "It was you," said the girl. "You got to the year 7s. So we're gonna teach you a lesson," said Nick Farthing, and he smiled without humor. "I quite like lessons," said Bot. "If you paid more attention to yours, we wouldn't have to blackmail younger kids for pocket money." Nick's brow crinkled, then he said, "You're dead, Owens." Bot shook his head and he just around him. "I'm not actually. They are. Who are?" said Mo. "A beer in this place," said Bot. "Look, I brought you here to give you a choice. You didn't bring us here," said Nick. "You're here. I wanted you here. I came here. You followed me. Same thing." Mo looked around nervously. "You've got friends here?" she asked. Bot stopped. "You're missing a point, I'm afraid. You need to stop this. Stop behaving like other people don't matter. Stop hurting people." Mo grinned a sharp grin. "For heaven's sake," she said to Nick. "Hit him." "I gave you a chance," said Bot. Nick swung a vicious fist at Bot, who was no longer there, and Nick's face turned to the side of the gravestone. "Where did he go?" said Nick. Nick was swearing and shaking his head, and she looked around the shadowy cemetery puzzled. "He was here, you know he was." Nick had little imagination, and he was not about to start thinking now. "Maybe he ran away," he said. "He didn't run," said Mo. He just wasn't there anymore. Mo had imagination. The ideas were hers. It was twilight in the spooky churchyard, and the hairs on the back of her neck were prickling. "Something is really, really wrong," said Mo. Then she said in a high-pitched, panicky voice, "You have to get out of here. I'm going to find that kid," said Nick Farthing. "I'm going to beat the stuffing out of him." Mo felt something unsettled in the pit of her stomach, and shadows seemed to move around them. "Nick," said Mo, "I'm scared." "Fear is contagious. You can catch it. Sometimes all it takes is someone to say that they're scared for the fear to become real." Mo was terrified, and now Nick was too. Nick didn't say anything. He just ran. Mo ran close on his heels. The trees like were coming on as they ran back towards the world, turning the twilight into night. The shadows and dark places in which anything could be happening. They ran until they reached Nick's house, and they went inside and turned on all the lights, and Mo called her mother and demanded, half crying, to be picked up and driven a short distance to her house, because she wasn't walking home that night. Bot had watched them running in satisfaction. "That's good, dear," said someone behind him. A tall woman in white. "Nice hit first, then the fear." "Thank you," said Bot. "I hadn't even tried to fear out living people. I mean, I knew a theory, but, well, he walked a tree," she said cheerfully. "I'm Amabella Person." Bot, "Nobody owns." "The live boy from the big graveyard on the hill? Really?" Bot hadn't realized that anyone knew who he was beyond his own graveyard. Amabella was knocking on the side of the tomb. "Brody, Petunia, come and see who's here." There were 3 of them there, and Amabella was introducing Bot and was shaking his head and saying, "Charmed, I'm sure, because he could greet people politely in over 900 years of changing manners." Mr. Owens here was frightening, and some children who doubtless deserved it. Amabella was explaining. "Good show," said Roderick Person. "Bounders guilty of reprehensible behavior." "They were bullies," said Bot, "making kids hand over the pocket money and stuff like that." "Frightening is certainly a good beginning," said Petunia Person, who was a stout woman, much older than Amabella. "What have you planned if it does not work?" "I hadn't really thought," Bot began, but Amabella interrupted. "I should suggest that dream walking might be a most efficient remedy. You can dream, can you not?" "I'm not sure. Mr. Pennyworth showed me how, but I haven't really." "Well, there are things I only know in theory," and Petunia said. "Dream walking is all very well, but might I suggest a good visitation? That's the only language that these people understand. Oh, said Amabella. Visitation, Fortuna, my dear. I don't really think so. No, you don't. Luckily, one of us thinks. I have to be. I have to be getting home, said Bob hastily. They'll be worrying about me. Of course, said the person frowning. And lovely to me. And a very good evening to you, young man. Amabella person and Fortuna person glared at each other. Object person said, if you'll forgive me for asking about your garden, is he well? Silas, yes, he's fine. Give him my regards. I'm afraid a small treasure like this, we will never meet an actual member of the honor guard. Still, it's good to know that they're there. Bernard said Bob, who had no idea what the man was talking about, but filed it away for later. I'll tell him. He picked up his bag of school books and he walked home, taking cover in the shadows. Going to school with the living dead did not excuse Bob from his lessons with the dead. The nights were crawling and sometimes Bob would apologize and crawl to bed exhausted before midnight. Mostly he just kept going. Mr. Benno felt little to complain of these days. Bob studied hard and asked questions. Tonight Bob asked about hauntings, getting more and more specific, which exasperated Mr. Pennyworth, who had never gone in for that sort of thing himself. How exactly do I make a cold spot in the air, he asked. And I think I've got fear that, but how do I take it all up all the way to terror? And Mr. Pennyworth sighed and hurried off. And he did his best to explain, and he was gone for in the morning before they were finished. Bob was there at school and the first class was history, a subject Bob enjoyed most, although he often had to resist the urge to say that it hadn't happened like that, not according to people who had been there anyway. But this morning Bob was fighting to stay awake. He was doing all he could to concentrate on the lesson, so he was not paying attention to much that was going on around him. He was thinking about King Charles I and about his parents, Mr. and Mrs. O. And of other family, the one he could not remember when there was a knock on the door. The class and Mr. Kirby looked to see who was there. It was the year sergeant who had been sent to borrow a textbook. As he turned, Bob felt something stab in the back of his head. He did not cry, he just looked up. Nick Farthing grinned down at him, a sharpened pencil on his face. I'm not afraid of you, said Nick Farthing. Bob looked at the back of his hand. A small drop of blood welled up at the point of the pencil had punctured it. More killing possible in the corridor afterwards. Her eyes saw what he could see the webs all around them. You're weird, she said. You don't have any friends. I didn't come here for friends, said Bob truthfully. I came here to learn. Most no switch. Do you know how weird that is? She asked. Nobody comes to school to learn. I mean, you come because you have to. Bob shrugged. I'm not afraid of you, she said. Whatever trick you did yesterday, you didn't scare me. Okay, said Bob, and he walked on down the corridor. He wondered if he had made a mistake, getting involved. He had made a misstep in judgment, and that was certain. More and Nick had begun to talk about him. Probably the years Hammond had as well. Other kids were looking at him, pointing him out to each other. He was becoming a presence, rather than an absence, and that made him uncomfortable. Sarah had warned him to keep a low profile, telling him to go to school partly faded. But everything was changing. He told his guardian that evening, told him the whole story. He wasn't expecting Sarah's reaction. I cannot believe, said Silas, that it can have been so stupid. Everything I thought had remained this side of invisibility. Remaining just this side of invisibility. And now you've become the talk of the school. Now, what did you want me to do? Not this. It's not like the olden times. They can keep track of your blood. They can find you. Silas' unmoving stare was like the half of the rock over molten lava. God knew how angry Silas was, only because he knew Silas. See me fighting his anger and control it. Bob swallowed. What should I do? He said simply. Don't go back. This school business was an experiment. Let's simply acknowledge it. Simply acknowledge that it was not a successful one. Bob said nothing. Then he said, it's not just the learning stuff, it's the other stuff. Do you know how nice it is to be a room full of people and all of them to be breathing? It's not like something in which I've ever taken preference to, said Silas. So, you don't go back to school tomorrow? I'm not running away, not from Mo or Nick or school. I'll leave here first. You will do as you are told, boy, said Silas. A knot of velvet anger in the darkness. Or what, said Bob, his cheeks burning. What would you do to keep me here? Kill me. And then he turned on his heel and began to walk down the path that led to the gates and out of the green yard. Silas began to call the boy back, but he stopped and stood there in the night alone. At the best of times, his face was unreadable. Now his face was book written in a language long forgotten, in an alphabet unimagined. Silas wrapped the shadows around him like a blanket and stared after the boy gone, and did not move to follow. Nick Farthing was in bed, asleep, dreaming of pilots on a sunny blue sea when it all went wrong. One moment he was the captain of his own pirate ship, a happy place, crewed by obedient 11 years, except for the girls, who were all older than Nick and who were especially pretty in the pirate costumes. And the next is alone on the deck, on a huge dark ship the size of an Otaker, with ragged black sails and scarf of frigate crashing through the storm towards him. And then the web of the dreams, he was standing on the black deck of the new ship, and someone was looking down at him. "You're not afraid of me," said the man standing over him. Nick looked up. He was scared in his dreams, scared of this dead-faced man in pirate costume, his hand on the hilt of a cutlass. "Do you think you're a pirate, Nick?" asked his captain, and suddenly something about him seemed familiar to Nick. "You're the kid," he said. "Bob Bones." "I," said his captain, "and nobody. And you need to change. Turn over a new leaf before all that, or things will get very bad for you." "And how bad in your head," said the pirate king, who was now only the boy from his class, and they were in school. Not the deck of the pirate ship, although the storm had not abated, and the floor of the hall pitched and rolled like a ship at sea. "This is a dream," Nick said. "Of course it's a dream," said the other boy. "I would have be some kind of monster to do this in real life." What can you do with me in your dreams?" asked Nick. He smiled. "I'm not afraid of you." He got the pencil in the back of my hand. But to the back of Bob's hand, and the black mark and the graphite pointed at me. "I was hoping it wouldn't have to be like you," said the other boy. He put his head on one side as if he were listening to some young beef, he said. "Wow, things in the cellar, or below decks. Depends on whether this is a ship or school, doesn't it?" Nick felt himself beginning to panic. "It isn't spiders, is it?" he said. "It might be," said the other boy. "You'll find out, won't you?" Nick shook his head. "No," he said. "Please, no." "Well," the other boy. "Well," said the other boy. "It's all up to you, isn't it? Change your way or visit the cellar." The noise got louder, a scuffling sort of scuffling noise. Well, Nick Farthing had no idea what it was. He was utterly, completely certain that whatever it would turn out to be would be the most scary and terrible thing he would ever encounter. He woke up screaming. Bob heard the scream, a shout of terror, and felt the scare and satisfaction of a job well done. He was standing on the pavement outside Nick Farthing's house, his face damp from the thick night mist. He was exhilarated and exhausted. He had felt barely in control of the dream walk. He had been all too aware that there was nothing else in the dream but Nick and himself, and all that Nick had been scared of was a noise. But Bob was satisfied. The other kids would hesitate before tormenting smaller kids. And now Bob put his hands in his pockets and began to walk, not certain where he was going. He would leave the school, he thought, just as he left the graveyard. He would go somewhere no one knew him. And he would sit in the library all day and read books and listen to people breathing. He wondered if there were deserted islands in the world, like the one which Robinson Crusoe had been shipwrecked. He could live in one of those. Bob did not look up. If he had seen a pair of watery blue eyes intentionally staring, watching him intently from the bedroom window. He stepped into an alley, feeling more comfortable out of the light. "Are you running away then?" said the girl's voice. Bob said nothing. "That's the difference between the living and the dead, isn't it?" said the voice. It was Liza Hemstock talking. Bob knew, although the rich girl was nowhere to be seen. "The dead don't disappoint you. They're alive. Now what they've done. We don't change. If they're living, they always disappoint you, don't they? You meet a boy who's all brave and noble, and he grows up to run away. That's not fair," said Bob. "Nobody owns. I knew they've run off from the graveyard without saying so much. It's fairly well to those who care for him. Your big mistress owns heart." "What's some of that?" He said, "I'll fight with Silas." "So? Come back to the graveyard to stop school. It's too dangerous. Why? Between your talents and my dispelment, the barrel will notice you." I was getting involved. There were these kids bullying other kids. I wanted to stop. I drew attention to myself. Liza could be seen now, a misty shape in the alleyway, keeping pace with Bob. "He's out here somewhere, and he wants you dead," she said. Him as killed your family. Us in the graveyard. We want you to stay alive. We want you to surprise us and disappoint us and impress and amaze us. Come home, boy. I think I said things to Silas. He'll be angry." if he didn't care about you, you couldn't upset him. Was all she said. The fallen autumn leaves were sleek beneath Bot's feet, and the mist blurred the edges of the wall. Nothing was as clean cut as he thought it was. As he thought it. A few minutes before, I did a dream walk, he said. How did it go? Good, he said. Well, alright. You should tell Mr. Pennyworth he'll be pleased. You're right, he said. I should. He reached the end of the alleyway. And instead of turning right as he planned and off into the walk, he turned left on to the high street, the road that would take him back to Dunstan and the graveyard on the hill. What? Said Liza Hemstock. What are you doing? Going home, said Bot. Like you said. There were shop lights now. Bot could smell the hot grease from the chip shop on the corner. The paving stones glistened. That's good, said Liza Hemstock. Now only a voice once more. Then the voice said, run, or fade, or something's wrong. Bot was about to tell her that there was nothing.
Bot was about to tell her that there was nothing wrong, that she was being foolish, when a large car with a light flashing on the top came veering across the road and pulled up in front of him. Two men got out from it. Excuse me, young man, said one of the men. Police, might I ask what you're doing out so late? I didn't know there was a law against it, said Bot. The largest of the policemen opened the rear door of the car. Is this the young man you saw, miss? Mo Quilling got out of the car and looked at Bot and smiled. That's him, she said. He was in our back garden breaking things, and then he ran away. She looked Bot in the eye. I saw you from my bedroom, she said. I think he's the one who's been breaking windows. What's your name? Asked the smaller policeman. He had a ginger moustache. Nobody, said Bot. Then, ow, because the ginger policeman had taken Bot's ear between finger and thumb and had given it a hard squeeze. Don't give me that, said the policeman. Just answer the questions politely, right? Bot said nothing. Where exactly do you live? Asked the policeman. Bot said nothing. He tried to fade. But fading, even when boosted by a witch, relies on people's attention sliding away from you, and everybody's attention. Not to mention a large pair of official hands was on him then. Bot said, you can't arrest me for not telling you my name or address. No, said the policeman. I can't, but I can take you down to the station until you give us the name of a parent. Guardian or responsible adult, into whose care we can release you. He put Bot into the back of the car, where Mo Quilling sat, with a smile on the face of a cat who has eaten all the canaries. I saw you from my front window, she said quietly, so I called the police. I wasn't doing anything, said Bot. I wasn't even in your garden, and why are they bringing you out to find me? Quiet back there, said the large policeman. Everyone was quiet until the car pulled up in front of a house that had to be Mo's. The large policeman opened the door for her, and she got out. We'll call you tomorrow. Let your mom and dad know what we found, said the large policeman. Thanks, Uncle Tam, said Mo, and she smiled. Just doing my duty. They drove back through the town in silence. Bot trying to fade as best he could, with no success. He felt sick and miserable. In one evening, he had his first real argument with Silas, had attempted to run away from home, and failed to run away, and now failed to return home. He could not tell the police where he lived or his name. He would spend the rest of his life in a police cell or in a prison for kids. Do they have prison for kids? He didn't know. Excuse me, do they have prisons for kids? He asked the man in the front seat. Getting worried now, are you? Said Mo's Uncle Tam. I don't blame you. You kids. Running wild. Some of you need locking up, I'll tell you. Bot wasn't sure if that was a yes or no. He glanced out of the car window. Something huge was flying through the air, above the car and to one side. Something darker and bigger and the biggest bird. Than the biggest bird. Something man-sized that flickered and fluttered as it moved, like a strobing flag of a bat. The ginger policeman said, when we get to the station, best if you just give us your name. Tell us who to call to come and get you. We can tell them we gave you a bollocking. They can take you home. See, you cooperate, we have an easy night. Less paperwork for everyone. We're your friends. You're too easy on him. A night in the cells isn't that hard, said the large policeman to his friend. Then he looked back at Bob and said, unless it's a busy night, we have to put you in with some of the drunks. They can be nasty. Bob thought, he's lying, and they're doing this on purpose, the friendly one and the tough one. Then the police car turned a corner and there was a thump. Something big rolled up onto the bonnet of the car and was knocked off into the dark. A screech of brakes as the car stopped. And the ginger policeman began to swear under his breath. He just ran out into the road. He said, you saw it. I'm not sure what I saw, said the larger policeman. You hit something though. They got out of the car, shone lights around. The ginger policeman said, he was wearing black, you can't see it. He's over here, shouted the large policeman. The two men hurried over to the body on the ground, holding torches. Bob tried the door handles on the back seat. They did not work. And there was a metal grill between the back and the front. Even if he faded, he was still stuck in the back seat of the police car. He leaned over as far as he could, craning to try and see what had happened, what was on the road. The ginger policeman was crouched down beside a body, looking at it. The other, the large one, was standing above it, shining a light down into its face. Bob looked at the face of the fallen body. Then he began to bang on the window, frantically, desperately. The large policeman came over to the car. What? He said irritably. You hit my dad, said Bob. You're kidding. It looks like him, said Bob. Can I look properly? The large policeman's shoulder slumped. Oi, Simon, the kid says it's his dad. You've got to be bloody kidding me. I think he's serious. The large policeman opened the door and Bob got up. Silas was sprawled on his back, on the ground where the car had knocked him. He was deathly still. Bob's eye prickled. He said, Dad? Then he said, you have killed him. He wasn't lying. He told himself, not really. I've called an ambulance, said Simon, the ginger-moustached policeman. It was an accident, said the other. Bob crouched by Silas, and he squeezed Silas's cold hand in his. If they had already called an ambulance, there was not much time, he said. So that's your career over then. It was an accident you saw. He just stepped out. What I saw, said Bob, is that you agreed to do a favor for your niece and frighten a kid she's been fighting with at school. So he arrested me without a warrant for being out late. And then when my dad runs out into the road to try and stop you, or to find out what was going on, you intentionally ran him over. It was an accident, repeated Simon. You've been fighting with Mo at school, said Mo's Uncle Tam. But he didn't sound convincing. We were both in 8B at the old town school. Said Bob, and you killed my dad. Far off, he could hear the sound of sirens. Simon, said the large man, we have to talk about this. They walked over to the other side of the car, leaving Bob alone in the shadows with the fallen Silas. Bob could hear the two policemen talking heatedly. Your bloody niece was used. and so was if you kept your eyes on the road. Simon jabbed his finger into Tam's chest. Bot whispered, "They aren't looking now." And he faded. There was a swirl of deeper darkness, and the body on the ground was now standing beside him. Silas said, "I'll take you home. Put your arms around my neck." Bot did, holding tightly to his guardian, and they plunged into the night, heading for the graveyard. I'm sorry," said Bot. "I'm sorry too," said Silas. "Did it hurt?" asked Bot. "Letting the car hit you like that?" "Yes," said Silas. "You should thank your little witch friend. She came and found me, then told me you were in trouble, and what kind of trouble you were in." They landed in the graveyard. Bot looked at his home as if it were the first time he had ever seen it. He said, "What happened tonight was stupid, wasn't it? I mean, I put things at risk. More things than you know, young nobody Owens." "Yes, you are right," said Bot. "I won't go back. Not to that school, and not like that." Maureen Quilling had the worst week of her life. Nick Farthing was no longer speaking to her. Her Uncle Tam had shouted at her about the Owens kid thing, then told her not to mention anything about that evening ever to anyone, as he could lose his job. And he wouldn't want to be in her shoes as if that happened. Her parents were furious with her. She felt betrayed by the world. Even the year 7s weren't scared of her any longer. It was rotten. She wanted to see that Owens kid, who she blamed for everything that had happened to her so far. Writhing in miserable agony, as he thought being arrested was bad, then she should concoct elaborate revenge schemes in her head, complex and vicious. They were the only thing that made her feel better. And even they didn't really help. If there was one job that gave Mo the creeps, it was cleaning up the science labs, putting away the Bunsen burners, making sure that all test tubes, petri dishes, unused filter papers, and the like were returned to their places. She only had to do it on a strict rotation system, once every 2 months. But it stood to reason that here, in the worst week of her life, she would be in the science lab all on her own. At least Mrs. Hawkins, who taught general science, was there, collecting papers, gathering things up at the end of the day. Having her there, having anybody there was comforting. "You're doing a good job, Maureen," said Mrs. Hawkins. A white snake in a jar of preservatives stared blindly down at them. Mo said, "Thanks." "Aren't there meant to be 2 of you?" asked Mrs. Hawkins. "I was supposed to be doing it with the Owens kid," said Mo, "but he hasn't been to school in days now." The teacher frowned. "Which one was he?" she asked, absently. "I don't have him down on my list." Bob Owens, brownish hair, a bit too long, didn't talk much. He was the one who named all the bones of the skeleton in the quiz, remember? "Not really," admitted Mrs. Hawkins. "You must remember, nobody remembers him, not even Mr. Kirby." Mrs. Hawkins pushed the rest of the sheets of paper into her bag and said, "Well, I appreciate you doing it on your own, dear. Don't forget to wipe down the working surfaces before you go." And she went, closing the door behind her. The science labs were old. They were long, dark wooden tables with gas jets and taps and sinks built into them. And there were dark wooden shelves upon which were displayed a selection of things in large bottles. The things that floated in the bottles were dead, had been dead for a long time. There was even a yellowed human skeleton in one corner of the room. Mo did not know if it was real or not, but right now it was creeping her out. Every noise she made echoed. in that long room. She turned all of the overhead lights on, even the lights on the whiteboard, just to make the place less scary. The room began to feel cold. She wished she could turn up the heat. She walked over to one of the large metal radiators and touched it. It was burning hot. But still, she was shivering. The room was empty and unsettling in its emptiness. And Mo felt as if she were not alone. As if she were being watched. Well, of course I'm being watched, she thought. 100 dead things in jars are looking at me, not to mention the skeleton. She glanced up at the shelves. That was when the dead things in the jars began to move. A snake with unseeing milky eyes uncoiled in its alcohol-filled jar. A faceless, spiny sea creature twisted and revolted in its liquid home. A kitten, dead for decades, showed its teeth and clawed the glass. Mo closed her eyes. This isn't happening, she told herself. I'm imagining it. I'm not frightened, she said, aloud. That's good, said someone, standing in the shadows by the rear door. It seriously sucks to be frightened, she said. None of the teachers even remember you. But you remember me, said the boy, the artifact of all her misfortunes. She picked up a glass beaker and threw it at him, but her aim went wide and it smashed against a wall. How's Nick? Asked Bob, as if nothing had happened. You know how he is. He won't even talk to me, just shuts up in class, goes home and does his homework, probably building model railways. Good, he said. And you, she said. You haven't been at school for a week. You're in such trouble, Bob Owens. The police came in the other day. They were looking for you. That reminds me. How's your Uncle Tam? Said Bob. Mo said nothing. In some ways, said Bob, you've won. I'm leaving school. And in other ways, you haven't. Have you ever been haunted, Maureen Quilling? Ever looked in the mirror, wondering if the eyes looking back at you were yours? Ever sat in an empty room and realized you were not alone? It's not pleasant. You're going to haunt me, her voice trembled. Bob said nothing at all. He just stared at her. In the far corner of the room, something crashed. Her bag had slipped off the chair onto the floor. And when she looked back, she was alone in the room, or at least there was nobody that could see her there was nobody that she could see there that she could see in there with her. Her way back home was going to be a very long and very dark. The boy and his guardian stood at the top of the hill, looking out at the lights of the town. Does it still hurt? Asked the boy. A little, said his guardian, but I heal fast. I'll soon be as good as ever. Could it have killed you? Stepping out in front of that car. His guardian shook his head. There are ways to kill people like me, he said. But they don't involve cars. I am very old and very tough. Bot said, I was wrong, wasn't I? The whole idea was to do it without anybody noticing. And then I had to get involved with the kids in the school. And the next thing you know, there's police and all sorts of stuff. Because I was selfish. Silas raised an eyebrow. You weren't selfish. You need to be among your own kind. Quite understandable. It's just harder out there in the world of the living. We cannot protect you out there as easy. I wanted to keep you perfectly safe, said Silas. But there is only one perfectly safe place for your kind, and you will not reach it until all your adventures are over and none of them matter any longer. Bot rubbed his hand over the stone of Thomas Orr's Stout, 1817 to 1851, deeply regretted by all who knew him. feeling the moss crumble beneath his fingers. He's still out there, said Bob, the man who killed my first family. I still need to learn about people. Are you going to stop me leaving the graveyard? No, that was a mistake and one that we have both learned from. Then what? We should do our best to satisfy your interest in stories and books and the world. There are libraries. There are other ways. And there are many situations in which there might be other living people around you, like the theater or the cinema. What's that? Is it like football? I enjoyed watching them play football at school. Football. That's usually a little early in the day for me. But Miss Lupescu could take you to see a football match the next time she's here. I'd like that, said Bob. They began to walk down the hill, Silas said. We have both left too many tracks and traces in the last few weeks. They are still looking for you, you know. You said that before. How do you know? And who are they? And what do they want? But Silas only shook his head and would be drawn no further. And with that, for the time being, Bob had to be satisfied.